A big truck come in, so this was the road from outside. A big truck came in with gravel, and he stopped at the house, and he said to Anne, "Hey lady, do you know where I've got to take this truck?" She said, "I'm not sure. Ask those 3 men over there." He looked over there, got in the truck, and went up to the retreat where Michael was, and he said, "Is that lady all right? She asked me to ask the 3 stumps. There were 3 tree stumps. She said, ask these 3 men." That was the first indication we had that Anne's mind was starting to slip.
Hello, I'm Barbara O'Neill. Imagine waking up one day only to realise your mind is slowly slipping away. Memory fading, judgment clouded, and reason harder to find. Dementia don't happen overnight. It develops over years of lifestyle choices, environmental factors, and even the foods we eat. But here's the good news. You have the power to make changes. In this episode, I'll take you through the shocking causes behind brain health decline and share natural, science-backed remedies that can help protect and even reverse the damage. Stay with me as we explore how you can take charge of your brain health today. As a thank you for joining me today, we're giving away 100 free copies of my best-selling book to our subscribers. So if you haven't yet, hit subscribe, like this video, and comment why you want to win. Now let's get started.
Met anyone that wants to have Alzheimer's? Is that right? No one wants to have Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's doesn't develop quickly. In fact, some people might think it does because they suddenly start to have some lack of memory, they start to have a few things, but it actually hasn't developed quickly. It's developed over a long time. See, what we do in our 20s is revealed on our 40s. What we do in our 40s is revealed in our 60s. What we do in our 60s is revealed in our 80s. And in my last lecture, I drew our brain, and I'm going to draw it again. And we're looking at the prefrontal cortex, and I'm sure you'll remember that the prefrontal cortex has 4 functions, and these 4 functions basically go down when someone has Alzheimer's. So when someone has Alzheimer's, how's their intellect? It's not very good, is it? How are their reasoning powers? Not very good. How is their judgment? Terrible. And so as you can see, that when someone has Alzheimer's, the part of the brain that is directly affected is the prefrontal cortex. And because the intellect and reason and judgment are gone, the decisions are terrible. In fact, I have people come to me saying, I woke up in the middle of the night, my wife was gone, I went outside, I saw her walking down the main road with no clothes on. Another man said, I woke up, my wife wasn't there, she's in the next door's yard taking their clothes off the clothesline and putting them on. And strange things, their reason, their intellect and their judgment is not working. So the $1 million question is why? Because Proverbs 26 verse 2 states that the curse causeless shall not come. It's Old English. It basically means no problem, no depression, no Alzheimer's, no dementia happens without a cause. There is always a cause. And in the little book, The Ministry of Healing, I love that formula. She says in the case of sickness, the cause should be ascertained. This is on the 2nd page in the chapter, The Physician, the Educator. Cause should be ascertained. So how do you ascertain the cause? There's one way to ascertain the cause, and that is the history. The history. And we are what we are because of our history. So you have a clear look at the exposure to chemicals. So we're going to flip backwards and forwards here. So we'll look at the Sustain Me principles, because the Sustain Me principles directly affect the functioning of the brain. The brain and the eyes are connected. In fact, the eyes are an extension of our brain. And this is where sunshine is very important to the brain. It needs sunshine. The brain needs sunshine, and it gets it through the eyes. Water. Our brain is a hydroelectric system. Sleep. We're going to have a look at 9:30 tomorrow morning, all the processes that happen while we sleep, but we'll touch on it tonight in its relation to Alzheimer's. Trust in God. Anxiety. Depression, which is really a lack of trust in God, can all contribute. Abstain. There are many things that are damaging the nerve cells in the area of chemicals, environmental poisons, especially mercury, moles, all having an effect to interfere with brain function. Inhale. We looked at the importance of inhaling through our nose. Nose purifies the air, humidifies the air, warms the air. Mouth does not do that. When we breathe through our nose, we're getting more oxygen in the brain. Nutrition.
Eventually, Anne's family came to terms with her decision, though it took many conversations. As the years went on, I noticed subtle changes in Anne's behaviour. Her memory and reasoning began to falter. She'd forget basic tasks, and small decisions felt overwhelming for her. This is why early intervention is so critical. Alzheimer's and dementia don't just happen. They're often the result of years of unaddressed habits and exposures. For Anne, I believe years of avoiding sunlight, minimal hydration, and poor sleep hygiene contributed significantly to her decline. The brain thrives on oxygen, water, and nutrition, and when these are missing, the neurons can't function optimally. Even mild chronic stress can elevate cortisol levels, slowly wearing down the prefrontal cortex. These are reminders that prevention starts with small, consistent changes today, because once damage sets in, reversing it becomes a monumental challenge.
Moderation in all the good things. Some things can be great, but if you overdo them, they can be harmful. Yes, we need to eat, but when you overload the stomach can't digest it all, and it fogs the brain. Exercise increases the circulation of the blood to the brain. So environmental poisons, toxic poisons, heavy metals, are there mercury fillings in the mouth? So you investigate, and it's the history that will give you an idea. So in case of sickness, ascertain the cause. Unhealthful conditions changed. How do you know if a condition is unhealthful? Get out of the mouldy house. I've had 2 men attend our program who got depression 6 months after moving into a mouldy house. So how so? So when it says unhealthful conditions changed, say there is a mouldy house, remember that when oxygen is present in the nerve cell, it's going to give us 36 units of energy. But when someone's breathing in mold from a mouldy house, there's not much oxygen there. And that top pathway that has no oxygen, that only gives 2 units of energy. Our brain needs oxygen. Maybe the person is living underneath the electrical towers. And those electrical towers, there's 500 times the electromagnetic field that's usually on the planet. That's how much it's increased under the electrical towers. It used to be that houses weren't allowed to be built under those electrical towers. But if you noticed, in some housing estates, they're there. And they're the cheapest house on the estate. Another one I have found is when there's been landfill and there's been a lot of chemicals dumped, and then housing estates are built. And then you'll find that in every house there's sicknesses. Some houses Alzheimer's, some houses depression, some houses cancer, some houses what they call autoimmune diseases, you see, arthritis, people react in different ways. That's why you can never be absolute on the cause. There are some common causes, but there are also differences in every case. Unhealthful conditions changed, wrong habits corrected. How do you know what the wrong habits are? You go through those laws of health. Are you drinking adequate water? Are you getting sunshine every day? Are you going to bed early? What sort of food are you eating? So that's how you ascertain whether habits need to be changed. And then nature is to be assisted. And we're going to have a look at this bit. And we're going to have a look at what can be taken to assist in the treatment of Alzheimer's and also the prevention. So you always look at the history. Symptoms are your body saying, excuse me, there's a problem and I need you to do something. And as you try simple natural treatments, your body will say, I like it, or your body will say, no, that's not doing much. So you adjust, and how you know how to adjust is you watch your body's response. And this is how we can be our own doctors. Yes, you might go to a specialist or a doctor or a naturopath or a functional doctor or a nutritionist or a herbalist and get their advice, but what do you do with that advice? You try it. You take it or leave it. And if it doesn't work, what's your body saying to you? We need to try something else. Because there's no one like you. That's why you're the doctor. So what we have found, and I'll give you a story to illustrate. We had a lady who lived with us for many years. She actually approached Michael, her name was Anne, and she said, Michael, I want to build a house on your property. So when I die, it's yours, but you look after me. Michael said, well, I don't mind looking after you, but he said, how do your daughters feel about you putting all your money into that? She said, I don't care what they think, because she said, I watch, they waste their money. She said, I worked hard for my money and I believe in what you're doing and I want to support it. Well, it eventually came about. Michael spent a lot of evenings talking to her children, her daughters and their husbands.
As we settled into the new property, Anne's condition continued to highlight the critical factors that contribute to brain health. One thing I've observed over the years is how these small daily habits, like avoiding proper hydration, skipping sleep, or consuming too much sugar, compound into significant cognitive decline. Anne's preference for refined carbohydrates and her resistance to sunlight likely played a key role in the build-up of those amyloid plaques in her prefrontal cortex. These plaques don't just appear suddenly, they're the result of years of neglecting the foundational needs of the brain. Moving to the new property gave us a chance to revisit how we supported her, but it was clear that without personal commitment to change, progress would be limited. This reminds me of the incredible resilience of the human body. It will heal when we nourish it with the right conditions, but it requires our active participation.
On the property, our house was here, and it was a 1,200-acre property. Her house was there, and then the health retreat was over here. And sometimes you could drive this way, and there was a creek there, and there was a creek there, and the creek actually went like this. And it'd take 10 minutes to drive to the retreat, and often we'd stop and have a little chat to Anne, and Michael would often leave his ironing there, and when I come back in the afternoon, she'd have the ironing hanging on the veranda. And it worked very well, and if we went to town, she came with us, and sometimes she'd come for a meal, and we dropped leftovers from the health centre, and it all worked very, very well. And after about 5 years, we had a big truck come in. So this was the road from outside. A big truck came in with gravel, and he stopped at the house, and he said to Anne, hey lady, do you know where I've got to take this truck? She said, I'm not sure. Ask those 3 men over there. And he looked over there, got in the truck, and went up to the retreat where Michael was, and he said, "Is that lady all right?" She asked me to ask the 3 stumps. There were 3 tree stumps. She said, "Ask these 3 men." That was the first indication we had that Anne's mind was starting to slip. And Michael would go to town with her and he'd say, "Are you drinking?" She said, "I've drank lots." And her bottle's full of water. And we started to realise she was not drinking any water. The brain is a hydroelectric system. From the neck up, we're 85% water. From the neck down, we're 75% water. Water is essential. So we started to see a few things. And then Michael said to me, "Do you know, I remember Anne. And Anne is well known, she never goes to bed before midnight." So here is another point. And Dr. Matthew Walker shows this in his book, Why We Sleep, that in the night, especially the hours before midnight, there's the glymphatic system. And the glymphatic system, it cleans up waste from neuronal activity. It's the brain's vacuum cleaner. It cleans up, yes, thorns from negative emotions when we forgive. It cleans up waste from combusting oxygen and glucose at the cellular level. But if, and all through our lives, it's not unusual that little calcified deposits can build up a little bit here and there in the prefrontal cortex, especially if the person's on a high acid diet. What's a high acid diet? A lot of meat? Well, Anne was a vegetarian, but she ate a lot of carbohydrates. She ate a lot of wheat, a lot of sugars. And those little calcified deposits, a few of them build up, but when we go to bed early, the glymphatic system can mop up those little calcified plaques so they don't develop. And what they have found in cases of people with Alzheimer's, they do post-mortems on them and they've got calcified deposits called amyloid plaques, all built up in the prefrontal cortex. So when those amyloid plaques build up there, they inhibit intellect, they inhibit reason, they inhibit judgment. So here was another aspect with Anne. Anyway, not long after that we moved to another property, because this property was very remote, and this property was 2 hours from town. And we had no electricity, we had solar panels, and so when a property an hour closer came up, we quickly negotiated with that and were able to buy it and move our business over a little bit closer. And as we went to the new property, we had a little room for Anne to live in.
So when we look at this damage, we need to ask deeper questions. What's triggering these conditions? The answer often lies in what the body is exposed to and what it's missing. For example, heavy metals like mercury, whether from fillings or vaccines, can severely impair nerve function over time. Combine that with chronic dehydration, poor sleep, and diets devoid of healthy fats, and you have a perfect storm for neurological decline. Cholesterol, often demonised, is actually a vital component for the brain's protective myelin sheath, yet so many people are urged to suppress it without addressing the underlying causes of inflammation. What's even more concerning is that these lifestyle-induced issues are avoidable. By understanding the brain's basic needs, hydration, nutrients and rest, we can take proactive steps to protect against dementia. Prevention is always easier than trying to reverse damage once it's already done.
Anne did not like the sunshine. She never went out there. She said, "No, I'll just get burnt." Do you know if you get burnt, you're only out there for 5 minutes. You might be out there for 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the afternoon, and your skin will be able to handle it. We could not get her to drink water. And you're not going to hold the person down and force it in. It's very difficult. And she just insisted that she'd had water. So that's very difficult. Michael would say, "Well, Anne, we're not going anywhere until you drink half that bottle." then she'd begrudgingly drink it. But it's really hard to be on top of someone like that all the time. Sleep. She'd been a terror for sleep. Now that we see what lack of sleep does, you see, there are two very famous people that boasted that they only needed 5 hours sleep a night. One is Margaret Thatcher, the other is Ronald Reagan. And how did they spend the last 20 years of their life? With severe Alzheimer's, severe dementia. So lack of sleep is a big one. And we also find that even though someone might love God and trust God, when they get dementia, they find it very hard because it's like their mind is not in the right place. We also find when someone has dementia, they'll just eat anything, they'll just drink anything. Like Anne, in her latter years, she ate and drank things she would never have considered in her right mind. So it gets in this vicious circle. Nutrition wasn't very good at all. Exercise. A lady come and attend our program. She came with her mother. She's 45. Her mother was about 75, and her mother had dementia. And I remember going into the bedroom, and the mother was just looking straight through me. You almost couldn't connect with her. She just stood there. And as we investigated, we discovered the lady wasn't drinking any water. We discovered she hadn't opened her bowels for 6 hours. So for little by little, we encouraged her to drink water. We found that she would drink some hot peppermint tea. And we encouraged her to have that little bit of salt. We gave her some herbs to get the bowels moving. Within 48 hours, her mind was clear. She was looking straight at us and she was talking to us. And on Wednesday night when we did the poultice demonstration, she was telling us about all the things that her mother did to her when she was a little girl. Her daughter was so excited about the turnaround in her mother, she booked in for a second week. And in that second week, she spent most of her time on the phone, arranging to get her mother out of aged care, and she brought her mother back home. Because she didn't have to micromanage her mother anymore. Because her mother's mind became clear, her mother started to make decisions that were good for her body and her mind. And her mother lived with her for another 10 years until she finally passed. So abstain who are on the cholesterol-lowering medication. Because the side effect of cholesterol-lowering medication, we'll just call them the cholesterol meds, the side effect is Alzheimer's and dementia. How many in aged care facilities are showing Alzheimer's and dementia who are on the cholesterol-lowering medications? And as I showed you, when we looked at the heart, cholesterol is not the cause of heart disease. The cause of heart disease is damage to the arterial walls. And because the damage is happening to the arterial walls, the liver releases cholesterol to actually patch up the holes. So to say that cholesterol causes heart disease is like saying the fire trucks are causing the fire. Now what we should be asking, if there is cholesterol buildup, why? Why is the body doing that? Because it doesn't do it for no reason. And so to come in with cholesterol-lowering medications actually is not helping the problem. Because our body needs cholesterol. And one of the reasons our body needs cholesterol is that this little fatty sheath around the nerve cell is predominantly cholesterol. You see, cholesterol plays a protective role. And that's why I mentioned earlier, if someone's on a fat-free diet, they've got mercury fillings in their mouth, they're having the flu injection every year which has mercury in it, they're eating fish every day, and maybe on top of that they're not drinking enough water, and on top of that they're going to bed at midnight every night. There's a recipe for dementia. That's a recipe for Alzheimer's. But for some people, they might react in something like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, Huntington's chorea, multiple sclerosis are all indications of damage to different parts of the nerve cell. So then the question is, well, what's caused the damage?
These cases, whether from physical trauma or lifestyle choices, all point to the same underlying truth. The brain needs intentional care to thrive. Sleep, for example, is one of the most overlooked yet essential pillars of brain health. The glymphatic system, our brain's vacuum cleaner, is most active during the early hours of the night, clearing away harmful amyloid plaques. When we miss this window by going to bed late, we compromise this natural cleaning process, increasing the risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. Simple changes like adjusting your sleep schedule, staying hydrated, and consuming brain-supporting nutrients like B vitamins and healthy fats can make a world of difference. Prevention is achievable, but it requires awareness and consistency. The choices we make today determine the clarity of our minds tomorrow. Let's prioritise these habits to protect the incredible gift of our brain.
See, our skull was created by God to be a protective armour. Notice with our skeletal system, it is an internal structure causing us to stand upright. But when it comes to the head, it becomes an external structure, protecting the most delicate and yet most important organ in the body, which is headquarters, which is the brain. But around that brain, there are 7 layers of fascia. What's fascia? It's balloon-type material, and in between each layer of fascia, there's fluid. So if we do fall, and I had a crash a few nights ago, and yes, I was encouraged to get a CT scan just because it was right at my temple where it's quite thin there. And the CT scan showed that my brain's working very well and there is no damage. So some of my close friends were a little bit concerned. I said, oh, righto. And it showed that there was no damage because there are 7 layers of fascia and there's that fluid around. But if that happened to me every single day, day after day, after week after week, after month, after year, then that protective covering would actually start to be the cause of damage. And so the damage in the brain can be caused by various things. But I'm sure if Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher had known what I'm going to show you tomorrow night and what I touched on tonight, that the vacuum cleaner system that is the most active in the early part of the night, made up of glial cells, one of its roles is to clean up any little amyloid plaques that might start to surface in the early parts of the night. So going to bed early protects the brain against that happening. And so to prevent Alzheimer's, we need sunshine every day. We need to keep well hydrated. And to help with hydration, we have the whole salt before every glass of water, just a tiny little crystal. To prevent Alzheimer's, we make sure we go to bed early. And I showed you in the last lecture how you can rewire your brain. One lady said, I go to bed at midnight every night, and I know that if I lay down at 9 o'clock, I'm not going to sleep. So you know what she did? She started to go to bed at 11:30. 2 weeks later, she started to go at 11. 2 weeks later, she started to go to bed at 10:30. 2 weeks later, she started to go to bed at 10. And little by little, she trained her brain back into sleep. Showing now is another contributing to Alzheimer's is lack of B vitamins. B vitamins are often called the brain vitamins. So where do we get our B vitamins? Our raw nuts and seeds are probably the highest source. Also some in your whole grains and legumes. So your B vitamins are your brain vitamins. That helps to protect your brain. What also helps protect the brain is fat. What's also important for the B vitamins to function is minerals. And you get your minerals in your dark green leafy vegetables and also your Celtic salt. So once again, we get to the 3 essential nutrients: fibres, proteins, and good fats.
Thank you for joining me in this vital conversation about dementia and how we can protect our brain health. Remember, every small step, whether it's better sleep, smarter nutrition, or staying hydrated, can make a big difference. If you found this information helpful, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who might benefit. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on future episodes where we dive deeper into natural health solutions. See you in the next video.